Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight on this beautiful Friday night. I'm David E. Austin, and welcome to Sign of the Times. We're ready for a wonderful broadcast tonight. We want to encourage you tonight to stay safe, stay healthy, make sure you protect yourselves going forward. We are still in the middle of a pandemic, but because we're in the middle of it, is an indication we're going to come out of it. I want to thank you for coming back to see us one more week. And tonight we have a special show dealing with a topic that is very pertinent to us, not only as private individuals, but as American citizens. We're entering a very special time of year. We're going to deal with this subject of voting. We're going to deal with voting. Questions have been arising. Should we vote? Is it our moral obligation? Some say it's not even our spiritual, whatever it is. We're going to talk about voting. We're going to talk about voter apathy. We're going to talk about some of the challenges of voting, and then we're going to give you some information in regards to voting. I want to challenge you tonight to write your comments and questions in the comment box. Let's have a dialogue and let's have a discussion. Listen, I want you to help me welcome our co-host for Signs of the Time. Minister Kim Richardson is with us tonight as well. Not only is Minister Richardson with us, thank you for joining us again, Minister Kim. Thank you for, as always bringing something special to the program. And our special guest tonight is a young man that really knows what he's talking about, and he's going to give us some good information tonight. Blakely Bates is with us tonight. Minister Kim, we're excited about. There's Blakely. Excited about what we're going to talk about tonight. Thank you for joining us, Blakely. A little information about Blakely going forward. I ran for office years ago, and in running for office, Blakely was my campaign manager. So he knows what he's talking about. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a clue. I had no idea what I was doing, but Blakely really helped me. I didn't win, so I can't give him too much props, but he knows what he's doing and knows what he's talking about when it comes to the political realm. And so tonight we're going to just unleash him and send him forward. Only thing, Mr. Blakely, your microphone is muted on your end, so we can't hear you. You're going to have to do something on that end. Thank you for joining us. Listen, let's take a moment, everyone. I'm going to hit the refresh button, give you a chance to invite some guests, and then we're going to go forward. So let's take a moment tonight and it's a serious thing. It's a serious topic. It's something that we need to talk about. It's something that we need to address. Either one of you guys can jump in. Either one of you guys can talk about this. But let's talk about something that happened about 55 years ago, which is the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which gave everyone the right to vote. One of you, explain the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I'm going to start right off by talking about it like I'm a 6-year-old.
The Voting Rights Act basically gave all people, African Americans, right to vote. And this is very important because actually we were already given the right to vote, but due to voter suppression and all kind of crazy stuff going on, we didn't actually, we weren't actually following through with voting. We were actually given the right to vote with the 15th Amendment, and that was way back February 3rd, 1870. Black men were given the right to vote, but because of voter suppression, whether or not you could read, so you had linguistical tests. They were charged money. If they didn't have money, they couldn't vote. If they didn't own land, they couldn't vote. Oh, by the way, if the KKK came to visit you the night before, you couldn't vote. You'd go up to register to vote, and they wouldn't let you vote. So because of severe voter suppression even though the 15th Amendment in 1870 gave Black men the right to vote, we didn't actually have the right to vote. Women in the United States of America was given the right to vote by the 19th Amendment, and that was in 1920. All women were given the right to vote. And now let me make myself completely clear. It was white women was given the right to vote. Black women didn't actually receive the right to vote till much later. So then you're speaking about this in after the civil rights movement took place in 1955 to 1968. And we struggled to end voter suppression. We struggled to end having to take a poll tax. We struggled against the KKK refusing to let us register to vote. And so there was a grassroots effort. Many people lost their lives with this right to vote. So then in 1960, what was that date you gave us earlier? 1965. So the Voters' Right Act was signed into law. It actually had to come in as a Bill of Rights, because you have to legislate another bill when a constitutional movement is not recognized. Then you actually have to come in with the bill when the federal government says that, oh, because of whatever reason, we're going to have to actually make the people comply to the constitutional movements. And then that's what happened with that right to vote. So you got the right to vote despite your race, your creed, or your color. You were given that right to vote. And that was a result of the civil rights movement. So when people are saying, taking this thing lightly, folks, your right to vote is sprinkled with blood. That's the blood of your countrymen, the blood of your countrywomen.
Right.
Okay. So no, you don't take that thing lightly. Come on. This thing, your ability to say, I have a choice. Mm-hmm. Your ability to say, I don't like the way I am governed is under your right to vote. Don't take that thing lightly.
One of the things, Mr. Blakely, Mr. Bates, is that when we were given an opportunity to vote, there were obstacles that we faced. We were charged, you had to pay to vote, as well as there was a time we had to take a literacy test to see, could you read? What are some of the obstacles that we face today? Although we're technically given the right to vote, what are some of the obstacles that we face in voting?
Let me first say thank you so much for having me on tonight. Can you hear me very well, Mr. Austin?
Very well.
Yes. Okay. Let me say first, thank you so much for the opportunity to you and Ms. Kim tonight. But just to address the issue, I think we have to deal with from this aspect is the apathy that happens within voting. And with understanding the apathy, that is really on the same verge of voter suppression. Mm-hmm. And people have to understand the difference. There's a difference in wording, but there are similarities within its actions. You have to understand the importance of what gerrymandering really is all about. Right. And people don't understand the same structure of government. Mm-hmm. And I think understanding the structure of how government is set up and the structure of how your participation in being active in government plays in the role of how government is distributed to its constituents. And so that particularly is very, very important. And so if I would suggest anything, it's a disillusion, if I can use those particular words. It is a disillusion to think that there's a difference between, again, voter suppression and voter apathy. They are one and the same. The only thing they did was linguistically change the language and the wording, but the actions of it remain the same. Okay. And if you don't understand the legalities and the the logistics of the legalities, but also understand the linguistics of how it's worded within the Constitution, within the laws of how things are implemented, you will always be lost. And that's important. And I know from historic standpoint, Miss Kim could probably give validation to what I'm saying in that, because it's in these communities, local, state, and national, where we don't participate. We don't participate in the voter process. And what I need people to understand primarily, voting is continual. I think we get so lost in the fact of it's a presidential election. Right. You vote every year. There is something going on that requires your attention to the republic democracy that is established here in the United States of America. And when you don't understand that, you miss the important things that positively or negatively impact you on the local level, because local politics are just as important as national politics.
Yes.
This is good. This is good. I like how you're bringing that thing, and I like how you're breaking this down. Now, I want to do, if you don't mind, let me go ahead and grab a rewind, because see, you about to break some really important things down, because when you're talking about voter suppression, that means outside forces attacking your right to vote. But then when you're talking about voter apathy, that's something that's coming out of your own head. And it's coming out of your own head because of misinformation. But let's go ahead and lay a proper foundation, because yes, I'm a historian. So that was mainly my role tonight, is because I wanted to talk about exactly who has the right to vote. First of all, if you are a naturalized citizen, if you are a citizen of the United States, whether you're naturalized or whether you gained your citizenship, if you're a citizen of the United States, you can vote. If you're 18 years old, you can vote. If you have been at your address for at least 30 days before the election, okay, you can vote. You can vote if you're registered to vote. Now, there's that word again, because that's how we lose a lot of people, because you don't go marching up to those polls November the 3rd thinking, yeah, check me out, I'm getting ready to vote. No, you're not going to vote. You must first register to vote. The deadline to vote in that November 3rd election is October the 9th. 2020. Yes. That is a Friday. You can register online. We are running along the bottom, because we did our little background talk before we started the show. Rock the Vote. You go on there, and it will have your state listed, and it will have your URL. All you have to do is click on your URL. It's going to take you directly into a link where you can vote, where you can register to vote online. Okay.
Now, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna jump back to something he said, and you guys can talk about it in comment below. Dr. David Walker, very educated. You know, I love to brag on my lifelong friend. He's got one of those earned doctorates. He didn't get one out of Walmart.
He didn't get that honorary, huh?
He didn't get an honorary. He earned that as an education, former educator. He put the time in, and he said, vote every election, every year. I want to ask you guys a question. You might not know the answer, so you might just have to shoot a ballpark or just say a wild figure. I'm wondering what percentage of, if I can pick on my own culture, because I can pick on my culture, but I can't pick on your culture. I wonder how many African Americans don't vote every year in every election. What percentage only vote every 4 years? How many, the last time they voted was 2012, I'm sorry, when President Obama was elected.
Well, yeah, you're right.
You want me to speak now and answer that, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. If I may, I do not know the actual statistics, and I don't want to give any fraudulent information in pertaining to that. But what I will say, if we was just to use a particular state outside of North Carolina, because I'm sure your show reaches many different demographics and states all over. But just let me just say this. As a whole, I can't give you the statistics off the top of my head, but in Atlanta, Georgia, where in Atlanta, down in the state of Georgia, where we see a lot, predominantly African American individuals there. I would just like to petition and just say this, that this rough number, but an average of 500,000 African Americans alone did not participate in that one city. Just in that one city, if we do the research, they did not participate even in the election process in our last general national election. 500,000 people did not participate.
That's in the general national.
In the general election.
Now, if you're saying that 500,000 didn't vote in the national election, come on, how many voted in the midterms?
The
numbers, but you can about imagine.
Right. The last statistic that I actually heard, because it did mention that, is that lower than 38% of us vote in what is called local elections, and this wherein lies a major problem, because if you, and that is why they're encouraging you that once you vote in 2020, go ahead and put your voting shoes on and get ready to vote again in 2022, because the problem is, if you will listen to the news, the Democrats and the Republicans at this time are so polarized.
Oh,
that absolutely nothing is getting done. You've got a Congress that is primarily Democratic. You've got a Senate that's primarily Republican, and they're not even talking to each other. They're so, okay, Congress, her job is to introduce the laws. They actually introduce the legislation. They bring up the legislation, but in order for it to be ratified, it's got to go to the Senate. So if you've got a Democratic Congress, you've got a Republican Senate, you get absolutely nothing done. That is what's going on right now, that absolutely nothing is getting done.
And to piggyback on that, and just to say a few moments, I don't want to dwell too long on a lot of things, but we have to understand, when it gets into voting rights and voting laws, we I think there's a lot of things that people don't understand when it gets to the Constitution, the Article 1 of the Constitution. And there was a lot of things historically that we can relate to. And I won't be the historian tonight on because we're on voting rights and laws and constitutional amendments, because we'll be here all night trying to figure that out. That Constitution is extremely long, but I just want to just make sure, and Minister Kim, and you can verify this. I think, Bishop, and just to get this point across, many people are still stuck in their minds on the information of just voting. People don't know where to go. People don't know where to get that information from. And that's the reason we have these people that are not voting. I know many young people, speaking from a millennial standpoint, are so disengaged from the aspect of politics. And with that being said, with us having the disengagement piece of it, they don't connect with whatever state they're in within their young Democrats or young Republicans or young independent caucuses. A lot of African Americans don't even know that an African American caucus even exists. People don't even know that we have the congresswoman from California who's the Black Caucus chairperson. I think her name is Miss Congressman Karen Bass. out of California. She is the chairwoman for the Black Caucus. But many people don't research that information and they don't know where to go. And I think where you don't have important information or imperative information, you're going to be lost. And it's something that we have to change. And I see the comment here. We have to change that. And how we change that, we have to become active in our communities. And what I mean by that, the local governments, they have boards. They have many boards and many committees. I've served on these boards, as you know, Mr. Austin, for the past 6 years.
Yes.
I've been active in my community. I started out on the Henderson Vance Parks and Recreation. Every city has one, not just speaking from my little small city, but just for every city. They have a recreation department. They have committees. You learn about the aspects of how your government from the local standpoint is ran. That's how you get involved. That's how you change that. Become involved in your local Democratic parties or whatever party you may be affiliated with.
Mr. Bates, may I interrupt you because
sure.
What you're saying is so true, but I have to interrupt you to ask you.
Sure.
Is because you're true. You're right. I'm not a millennial. I'm close. Okay.
Praise God.
Is it because, and I think about my daughter
yes.
At 24 years old, is it that the young generation, this generation, can't relate to the political realm because those that represent us don't look anything like us?
Well, I don't even see.
And that's part A. Point B, is it because the ones that represent us don't respect and reach back to pull us in? Because listening to you now, you have all, and I know you personally, so I know you have all of the wisdom, you have all of the information and knowledge to represent, but is it because the older generation that's in position say this guy's too young to be a leader?
Well, let's first deal with that. If you can reiterate that first question for me of just why the millennials are not involved in it. Well, listen, we have people that are in office and in positions that are still having the mindset of a 1960s type of generation. Right. And so when you have those individuals that are in office within a 1960s generation, I don't even hold them responsible. Okay. Because their mindset is still stuck in the generation of what they are accustomed to and what they profit from. I hold responsible us as the constituents and the voters, although many states don't have what they call term limits. And that's something I'm big on anyway. We need to fight for that. But that's a whole nother night. We can talk about that later. But we don't even have term limits. But the voters have not held people responsible, and they have not held people accountable for the positions in which they serve. I need people to understand something that I'm very passionate and very important about. Not only are we electing these people to hold a political office, but you are electing these people to a legal responsibility. And because they are upheld to a legal responsibility, there are certain laws, there are certain things, policies and procedures that must be conducted and adhered to. But because you as an individual, as a voter, you have entrusted your vote to be the representation that you sent, but you have not yet once went back to ask questions as to why they're spending this money, as to why they're having these special call meetings. The responsibility of checks and balances relies on the voter to those that we send to represent the values in which we believe.
I'm a citizen. First of all, I have no idea that they're spending money on this. I have no idea that they're going on retreats. I have no idea that they're spending money on this. How do you said question them, hold them accountable?
I have the answer to that one. Okay.
By all means.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Each one of your legislators, and it starts from the local level.
Absolutely.
We are so plugged into being entertained that we don't ever pay attention to what's going on locally. Now, listen to me. They are required by law to let you know that they can be contacted. You have your local county commissioners. They actually have email addresses. If you email them, they'll answer. You have your legislators that breaks that thing down, that will actually tell you how to contact them through emails. I work with the NEA. That's the National Education Association. When we want things changed, we bombard these senators. We bombard the legislators.
Absolutely.
We bombard them with emails and letters and calls, and we attend the local governmental meetings. But the information is available, and
Yes.
what has happened, too many people have checked out, and that's what's happening. That's what you mean by voter apathy.
I think that is an outstanding point. And let me just say this, just so for the constituents, and I say constituents, and let me explain why I say constituents, because you have an interest, and that interest, as a shareholder, I would say, and it is your responsibility to make sure that you get in touch with whichever party that represents your best views. You get in touch with those people that are in the local Democratic parties or Republican parties, constitutional, independent, Tea Party, whatever party you may be affiliated with. You need to make sure that they are active in your community. That's how I started. I looked up this information. It's available, and then sometimes it's not. And when it's not available, that's the purpose of your representatives that you elect. They need to give you that information. And listen, if they can't give you the basic information that they'll represent you as to how you can better be informed about what is going on politically in your community, then you need to reevaluate who's representing what you believe.
Anyone want to tackle that question on the bottom of the screen?
I don't see that.
I believe those who represent us in government is out of touch with their community. What bothers me is once elected, their agenda changes. Listen, let me tell you something. You are going to respond to the whistle that whistles the loudest. Oftentimes, we're very concerned that our representatives are going a route that we didn't want them to go. Well, if that's all they're hearing from, if they never ever hear from the regular family, how are they going to ever know that is an issue? There's a lot of people, you guys, that know this, that knows the political process, and they have taken advantage of it because they did it from the local level. Okay, we elect a president every 4 years, but there's a lot of things that a president is not responsible for.
Right.
Your local, like for example, North Carolina. North Carolina is ruled by a General Assembly. Everything is financed through that General Assembly. If you know nothing about your General Assembly, there's no use in you getting mad talking about, well, they didn't finance this or they didn't finance that. What's going on is a lot of young people have been told that their vote doesn't matter. Your vote does matter. And
not only does the vote doesn't matter, but they've been told the only vote that matters. Right now, if you ask Minister Kim, if you ask most young people who you're voting for, they don't talk about the General Assembly because they don't know who's running.
They don't know
about the county commissioners because they don't know who's running. They don't talk about city council because they don't know who's running. Right now in America, it's only down to two names, Trump versus Biden. And I'm afraid that our nation is built on bigger than just two names.
It absolutely is. I'm sorry, because with this presidential election, what happens now? You're dealing with party, and all you're seeing is, well, I don't agree with this party, and I don't agree with that party. But what you better do, please, whatever you do, don't go into that voter booth and vote a straight ticket. You better know everybody's bio. Check their bio. See if that bio lines up with what you believe and what your family believes, okay? Or what is in need of your family. But right now, you're right. So many people have no idea that there's more than a president being elected these 4 years. We got senators and congressmen.
Yep.
And I would say this, and a lot of people, we even deal with that. And let's just deal with And I think it's important to deal with the legalities of things and understanding this. Not only are we electing just the General Assembly in Congress and the presidential, please, there are some powerful people that are on your local level. Let me say this very strategically. You need to know who your judges are, because your judges and your DAs are the ones that contribute to the fact of enforcing what the legislation has put in place. And I need people to understand something. I think politics is one discipline that there is, and we put it on the end. We say political science, but I have an issue with saying that, because if we understand politics, there is no particular formula to politics. Politics doesn't have an equation of how it's figured out or how it's implemented. Politics to me is not a science. It is an opinionated bias. And so if you can understand the difference of how it's not a science per se, it's the study of certain things. And we have to study it to understand particularly how it functions. But the implementation of those laws, if we go back, and Minister Kim, I'm referring so much back to you because I think it's important people understand the historicity of government. Because if you don't understand the historicity of it, you can't move forward. If you don't understand history, you're going to repeat it. And so we got to understand, even I think in the early 1800s, now, Miss Kim, I need your help here. I think in the early 1800s, about 1820s, where white men that had property of the age of 21.
Age of 21, right.
And if I'm correct, the property was those particular slave owners. But those things, although that they were legal with the legalities, it was strategically biased by an opinion of those that implemented to gain from self-interest.
Right.
And self-interest was the underlying methodology that pushed the legalities into place.
Right.
And so that study of science that says, from that standpoint, that says, oh, we study how to make money and keep voter apathy and voter suppression in its place and in keeping you in your proper position.
Right. Isn't that the same thing we talked about when we started? The first thing we talked about, you mentioned that voter suppression. You mentioned that isn't the same thing with the literacy test. Legally, you can vote. However, if I can just say it like a 6-year-old, that loophole that in order legally you have a right to vote. However, the loophole is, can you read? Why do I have to learn how to read the vote? Because you won't be able to read the ballot. Now,
and one thing I do need to break it now on Sister Felicia Renee. Thank you, Felicia. I like how she brought up a term. She's talking about political literacy. Actually, everyone was taught it, but you know what? There was things that happened when they removed prayer from the school and they wanted to separate. Church from state. They actually said that patriotism was actually even removed out of the schools. But around about 5th grade, around about 6th grade, but when you went over the American presidents, they taught you political literacy. They taught you that you lived in a republic. They taught you about the vote. They taught you that your townships and your township, counties, boroughs. They taught you that, and each one of those entities all contribute to the whole, but each one of them have representatives to represent that area, because people did not know. Only the people that had money, and like you said, the special interest groups. And this is what's going on, because when Sister Carter said, well, once they get into the office, then they forget us, because they do, because politics is all about money. Now, let me explain something very clear to you. This is the problem that we're dealing with right now. There actually is a political science. It is important that you are, and let me calm myself down, because I need you all to understand something. When you go to the polls, you're not going to elect your pastor. You are going to elect a politician. And let me make myself completely clear. That politician has to operate within the law. The law book is the Constitution of the United States. Both parties are vehemently calling each other unconstitutional. There is things that's going on every day that is unconstitutional, that is going against what the law of this land is. For example, the craziness that just came out, like voting twice, that is a felony. You cannot vote twice. And it came out on the news earlier. If you have a question about your online ballot, check up at the top of that ballot. It actually has a number. Write that down before you send it in. And if you want to make sure that your ballot has reached the board of the election board, you can go online and Google that stuff. Yes, a lot of things are online. A lot of us are not comfortable with that. That's why we have to get our grandmas, our aunties, our uncle and them upstairs and get them in front of a computer and get them to register to vote like your life depends on it, because you're right. There is a political agenda. There is a political literacy. A politician must operate within the law. When you get a person up there who is not a politician, then you get the situation that we're dealing with right now. Oh yeah, that was cute. Let's send somebody up there who's not a politician. Then you sent somebody up there that's offending our laws, offending our traditions, offending. But they have to uphold them. The United States military, their commander-in-chief is the commander-in-chief. All right. So their hands are tied. That's why you see so many of them retiring. They say, okay, we're not operating constitutionally anymore. You need to get your head out of the sand. We're not electing our pastors. We are electing people who have been elected to spend the money that we give every time we work. We pay into FICA. We pay into unemployment. They are spending your money.
Here's a comment that sums up voter apathy. But we've been voting for years and the same thing's been happening, so it doesn't matter if our vote counts. What matters is to me, are the laws going to be changed once you're voted in? Now,
if you don't vote, you don't have anything to say.
Well,
it does matter. Your vote does matter.
It does.
Your not voting is a vote. Okay.
Now, we got two Felicias that are talking on here a lot, and the first one said this: that on a local level, to be honest, electing an official is based on popularity and not on ethics or agendas.
You know that to be true, don't you?
Yeah, I know. Well,
you know that to be true. It didn't have anything to do with
right. It all on a local level, and part of that, Mr. Bates, is a part of that. A financial side of Blakely is a financial side, because on a presidential election, there's more money involved, so that I can run more television ads. I can put out more paraphernalia to express and explain my agenda. On a local level, where there's not a lot of financial money being swayed, it is, in my case, it was a matter of me just going door to door, and perhaps I spent more time sitting down. I remember going to visit one person's house asking for a vote, and we were talking, and instead of me going to the neighbor's house, I spent an hour sitting there talking to this lady about her little dog. I got to know her, but I didn't get to know the neighbors as well as I could. So Blakely, you ran for office. Talk to us about that.
Let me first say this, because I wanted to make sure there's a correction, and I won't be misled. Let me say this as a correction for Minister Kim. I don't mean any disrespect by when I said that there's no science to it. I want to make sure something is very clear. There is a science to how things are conducted in the business of government. But I want people to understand something when I say it, because I want to be very clear and very strategic when I say this. Understanding the bias that is attached to those that are in those offices and how things are appointed. Because what has to happen is you got to go understand something, is that when you are elected into those positions, then that you have those committees that you steer, what they call steering committees. And a lot of things are done not on the C-SPAN channel when they're actually voting. A lot of things are conducted when they're having these judiciary steering committee, because there's funding that is allocated. Let me use the right, because I think it's important that the legalities and the right language is used here. And so if we understand what I'm saying by the bias of how those people are sometimes on some committees are appointed by certain individuals to direct how the funding is funneled down the pipeline. And those things, what we call are conflict of interest. And then that is the responsibility of the voter. But let's be realistic about this now. The voter typically are the individuals are middle class, or let's just not even deal with the class of it. Let's deal with those people that 40 million people in the United States of America are poor. There's a poverty attached to that. So they are about distractions of work, and they're dangling a check in front of your face. So that is your distraction. You have kids, is another distraction. You have those bills, are another distraction. And then they schedule meetings that are during the time that you are at work. And your government officials who you entrust are the ones that are supposed to attend these steering committees, but then become compromised by economic and financial gain. We have to understand how important that has become in the political spectrum, and we have to re-guide that. I can't get on that talk tonight, but for many of you, I follow him very much. Please follow Dr. William Barber II. He is a great man, repairers of the breach out of Greenville, North Carolina. He also sits on the national board for the NAACP, which he deals with the morality of our country. Please follow him. I can't talk about all of that tonight. We don't have enough time in the day to deal with the wisdom of Dr. William Barber II. But he has talked about this for years, and we have ignored it. But Bishop, to get back to answering to your questions on running on the local election, again, people, I need you to understand, it's not the fact, Mr. Austin, that you lost because we had to go door to door. We lost because we could not get people to see that when you invest into the political structure of where you live, you become the shareholder of that. Right. And you have to support the fact. Understand this, with Joe Biden, with Donald Trump, at the end of the day, we'll say Republicans, they're the ones that are about money. Democrats are socially accountable. But let me give you a quick reality check on a lot of things. What you value, what you're going to invest in. If you don't value the political structure, you're not gonna invest in it. And what I mean by that, because of this pandemic, it has touched a lot of people's pocketbook. It has touched a lot of people's wallet. And see, when it touched people's money, it catches your attention. But the truth of the matter is, you have to take some sense of government as a whole out of it. Okay? You got to take that as a whole out of it and say to yourself, what is your community coming together to do, to add, to be an asset with government to be able to access the money and funding of your tax dollars. Let's look at this now. Reality now. Let's look at this from a money standpoint. If the government, and I didn't come up with this philosophy, go listen to Bishop T.D. Jakes. He gave a great argument. I just study and I follow and I listen. T.D. Jakes said something that I followed. They had a debate in one of the years. He said that if 40% of our check is already taxed before you get it. Now listen, 40% of your check is taxed before you get it.
Mm-hmm.
That leaving you 60% to try to live off of. If you got kids, make sure your kids are taken care of. If you want to buy a house, you got to make that house payment. If you got investments, then you got to try to make 70% of bills, 10% for investing, 10% for savings, and 10% for vacation. But again, we don't even understand financial literacy. So how can we expect as a culture
Come on, preacher.
to move forward? And I think it's important that we must deal with these realities first and foremost of money management. Get your money and your affairs in order, because there's some reality checks that we just need. And I'm glad, I mean, in honesty, I'm glad from a political standpoint that the government really exposed their hand more than they really wanted to, because it shows to us where we really need to be. It shows to you the career fields that really makes a difference and matter. It shows to you what you need to really be paying attention for. If your city, your state is getting $2.87 million from the federal government to your state, where are they funneling that money to? If your government is getting this educational lottery that was designed for education, please tell me, particularly for the state of North Carolina, why is the state of North Carolina is in the lower half of educators when we are one of the leading states in institutions?
It's being funneled, like you mentioned, gerrymandering. The money's being funded to build schools in counties that are not lower end counties.
Of course. And let me say this, Mr. Austin, and I'm going to jump on your wonderful good pastors and your wonderful good bishops that all they want is clout in the church, and they want to be all these apostles. Last time I checked, if I can have a spiritual reference, and you can help me, because I'm still praying on getting delivered about a few things. But listen to me. I think it's important that all these apostles need to understand their role, and their role is to understand the structure of being an establishmentarian. And being an establishmentarian, you got to understand structure and order, and that gets you automatically into government. Now, the existence of Jesus when he came through, essentially, we got to understand that Jesus was one of the most controversial political individuals, because he disrupted what I believe, you correct me if I'm wrong, Apostle, the Sadducees and all of those individuals that was what's the word I'm looking for, was contaminating or making the temple toxic because of their personal self-interest. So if these religious bigots, and yes, I said it, and before I take it back, I'll say it again, these religious bigots, self-centered, self-interest individuals that want to manipulate the church and manipulate people and paying their tithes and offering. Matter of fact, if you want people to pay their tithes and offering, you need to do your research, because if I last checked, that was for the priests and the elders. We'll get on that later. But I'm just trying to help some of y'all. If you're gonna give us this methodology about giving money, how about you learn the structure of what your office really is and get in the government? You won't have to pastor those people that are in poverty and you preaching that the Lord is going to make a way somehow. If you would your non-educated, non-individual self somewhere and get educated about your community and find out where the money is. No. The money is there. You're paying it in your tax dollars. So you turn yourself up there and tell them there are grants. And let me help some of y'all, not just grants at all. And for all of y'all that don't know, there's federal funding, what they call governmental contracts. Let me go on and educate some of us tonight, because I think we need this education. And a lot of times, I'm not trying to be politically correct or technical about any technical situations tonight, because the reality of the fact is I can give you all of the legalities I can give you all of the language, the logistics, and everything about it. And I haven't even completed my degree, but I read because leaders do read. Leaders do understand the process. So let me help some of you tonight, because I want you to understand that the funding is there. They are called governmental contracts, but people are too lazy. People are too lackadaisical, and they done got so as well. They want people to just give them something, and they lazy behind. I'm gonna say behind tonight. Now, ass is in the Bible. I will say that, but they lazy behind. Don't want to go and do the work that is necessary to get the results. You can get these contracts. You can be an outside vendor. You can be an individual that go and get this money. It's there. Stop waiting for somebody to do something for you, and you get up off your behind and go do something for yourself. Now, if you don't like it, that's your personalized business. But I'm telling you the truth, because we have patty cake politics so long. We've played with politics. We got to be able to get this individual and kiss their behind before we think we can get somewhere. Get off your butt. Do some reading. Matter of fact, educate yourself and read sometime. And I promise you, if you can just pick up a book sometime, get off of Facebook, get off of all this social media, because what you got to understand is that stuff that is on Facebook, you guys have run into and looking for. But let me help you. There's no validation in Facebook. Those are not reliable sources. You have to check your facts. And when your facts is on, your information is off. But understand, facts also and numbers can be manipulated. So when you check your numbers, you can get some certain things that are manipulated as well. But you got to deal with the legalities of this. I've been in politics for 6 years, and I don't listen. They don't like me, and I really don't care. But the fact of the matter is that we have to stop. I mean, seriously, stop trying to massage the issue.
Right.
Stop trying to politicize the issue to be politically correct. The United States is a leading country. We were based off of the fact of people being able to come here to be successful. We got to deal with the realism of what the issues are. We got to deal with the underlining issues and stop dealing with these things on the surface. These things are deeper than what your little patty cake feelings are. Get over that. Wear that stuff on your sleeve at another time. My grandmother, my grandfather, and them generation did more with less than we're doing right now.
Right.
That's right. That is true. That is true. And then I just want to back up and go ahead and put some words on. Young man, you covered quite a bit. First of all, you brought out something in the political process that's rarely ever spoken about. That's exactly right. There are steering committees. There's no way they can deal with these massive social issues with just jumping on top of it. So what happens is the thing goes to committee. They say, okay, we will send it back to committee. And then what happens is the lobbyists lobby the committee.
Yes.
Now, and why is money so big in politics? Because, for example, if you got a large interest group that has the money, they're going to send their lobbyists in to provide the information for the lawmakers, so that when they're in committee, and then they got to bring it up on the floor to vote. So that's why I said there is a political process. Now, there was a question that came up. Sure. My brother Dartez. Dartez, your question was fair, and let me answer that question, because bring it from a historical point of view, and especially when you're dealing with this presidential election. He said, was it true that Clinton received 2.87 million votes more than Trump? Yes, she won the popular vote by 3 million. But the president of the United States is not elected by the popular vote. The president of the United States is elected by the Electoral College. Now, when exactly is the Electoral College told to vote? Or when exactly is Electoral College vote actually tabulated? Let me tell you when that's done. That's done during the primaries, okay? The primaries. So during the primary, and see, traditionally, Blacks don't vote during the primaries, okay? this was the first year, in this year in 2008, that you had mamas, papas, uncle them, everybody going down to that poll and voting during the primaries. This was the first year because of that senator from South Carolina. And that's how we got that shift towards Biden. And you were able to see that. But I'm telling you, the popular vote is not what elects your president, but it does inform the electoral college as to who they're supposed to represent as a whole. That's why we got to get everybody that can see, even if they have to vote with their elbow, and get them registered out to vote if you want a real change. Okay, if you want
I want
Cortez did say something about, I know very well. I'm sure he does know that the electoral college, that was his point, because every election from dog catcher to the student council president growing up, it's the popular vote. So we need to address and teach that. Now, Ms. Carter's point here, if we can address this, is has this been taught in our community? My view on this, and I'll let you, Blakely, deal with this. Knowing us, you get a building, you set up a workshop on voter, all of this issue. How many people are gonna show up?
3.
And that's a great way to start that off. We have to get people engaged, and this is the thing. And getting those people engaged, Ms. Carter, I do want to make sure that I address that very, very clearly, because I am also, and I need people to understand this, I'm also the second vice executive president for our executive leadership for our Democratic Party in my area. And the challenge that we have is that many times, yes, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You're trying to recruit me on.
Don't worry. I'll get you in a little while. We'll talk about that after we get off the line.
Check.
Checkmate. Yes. So I think I'm sorry. So I think that since I've already then crossed my line of being politically correct tonight, we'll just keep right on going, because I won't make a good point on this. Is that we must deal with being engaged, and that information must be presented to us. Now, I do understand that there are some areas specifically. Let me deal with this because I live in this type of environment. Let me deal with the rural community. Okay, and let's deal with that on a realistic standpoint. Rural communities, they don't have that many resources, and it's a mentality that is small, is nothing going on. But hear me when I tell you, there is money coming to these communities. And the money that's there, now some of them may not be allocating it well. It may not be known. You may not know where to go look for it. I promise you, if you contact me, and I'll give Mr. Austin my information, and I hopefully that we'll keep this conversation going, because this is a very important conversation, and we'll make sure you get in touch with your leaders. I help people all throughout the East Coast. I help people even in the Midwest and on the West Coast, understanding their leaders. I talk to people that are sitting on city councils in Maryland and Washington, D.C. You know why? Because I need to know what we're doing here and what they're doing there is synonymously working together and making sure that we're getting the right turnout for this election. It's about getting involved. People, I promise you, it's about getting involved. And we got to be taught how to spend that money. I'm telling you, it's important.
Can we deal with this issue of being educated? Because my question was, if you get a building and you rent it out and you say that Thursday night from 6 to 7:30 we're going to do political training. You guys said, correct me, 3 people. Coronavirus has opened up a totally different door for us.
Yes, that's true.
Now we can virtually do it.
We can virtually, so it's no excuse.
We need to, because tonight, we're not sure of the viewers that popped in and out. Had we had across the screen, because right now across the screen is talking about voting. Across the screen, if it said a word of hope, and there'd have been hundreds of people on here, but people don't want to hear anything about voting.
Well, we have to make it attractive.
That we do something to get people educated now virtually.
Well, let's deal with this from a business standpoint. We need education to start. and for people to understand the structure of government. But let me say this: we have to do a better job, and this gets on me. We have to do a better job at marketing. And what people listen, people, hear me when I say this. No matter what field, no matter what you do, I'll go back to it every single time. I don't care how old and how repetitive that it becomes. No matter what you do, anything that you value, you have to invest in it. You have to invest some time. You got to invest some resources, and you have to be committed to that thing.
Right.
And then that thing, like any other business or entity, organization, whatever it is, you have to commit yourself to it and do the work of it.
Right.
And I'm so glad we have concerned people that want to ask these questions. But
Well,
the same people that are concerned, I want you to work.
Work.
Just
But
do what you can do.
Here's a big question. And Miss Felicia Renee said, I took it down because it was covering half your face. Shouldn't this education start in the elementary school?
It does.
Yes, it does.
It actually does. But
change our curriculum. It may be too late for some of us, but should we change our curriculum that in kindergarten, in first grade, we start teaching political, your term, Mr. I almost called you your name growing up. I ain't gonna do that to you tonight. Shouldn't we go back to teaching political science as part of reading, writing, arithmetic, and voting?
I will yield the floor to actually Miss Kim. I want her to answer that from an educational standpoint as an educator. I'll yield the floor to her for that.
The curriculum in North Carolina, actually, because I do know about the curriculum in North Carolina actually does include political literacy. But it's like you said, you all said something that was very important when you say relevance, that the kids are not connecting a relevance to it. But can I share something that happened to me? I taught history in 6th grade. And I was teaching history the year 2016 when the presidential election was going through with Clinton and Trump. And we followed every day in our social studies classroom the political process. We knew about it. 5th grade is all about the Constitution, all about the president, all about that. So now that education is online and parents are actually having to pay attention to what their children are learning, you'll see that your children actually are being learned. They're actually being taught the Constitution. They're actually being taught local government. They're actually being taught all of that in the North Carolina curriculum.
Look at this comment, because I think this is, you talk about relevant. There was a teacher that I remember working at Dabney Elementary School in Henderson, North Carolina. Her name was Susan Abbott. She just retired. She taught first grade. Ms. Abbott taught her students something that I can't do if you wrote me a check for $1 million a night. They learned in first grade every president from George Washington up to, I think it was President Obama at the time. And they sung it, they rapped it, they knew it. They remember James A. Polk. They went and she taught it. Miss Felicia's question is being taught in a non-boring matter. Are we trying to then once they left first grade, we don't know when's the next time they heard the name William Taft or James A. Polk. We don't know when they heard it. Are we trying to teach something to a 2020 group of first and second graders in the same manner that we were taught back in the 70s and the 80s? We have to teach it on their level to where we grasp, but we don't need to start in 5th or 6th grade. Don't we need, if you guys disagree, please feel free. I'm not going to pop you off the screen if you disagree. Shouldn't we address it at an age where it sinks into, because all of us, all three of us, if I start this, I'm going to start a quote and you guys finish this quote. Now I know my ABCs.
Next time, won't you sing with me?
That was embedded in you when you were younger. And it was something that you can get with. Shouldn't we be embedding our political values and our political not agenda, but our political structure to our babies, so that when they grow older, when they get old, it will always be embedded, as well as the integrity of politics. Because somewhere along the line, we've lost the integrity of politics.
I think Blake answered that, Blake, when you were going forth so passionately earlier. You answered that thing. You was like, we got parents that are working 2 and 3 jobs just to keep roof over their head.
Right.
Parents, and so your kids don't do what you say. Kids do what you do. Okay.
Right.
So as you become interested, because for example, the Black Lives Matter mural downtown, y'all, that thing took me back to the days when, because I was alive when Martin Luther King was shot. I remember when my mama cried. I remember walking the streets at 9 years old, and I was soul sister number 9, walking down the street 10 times a week. Gawa, and I'm walking up and down the streets. It's 2020, and I'm saying we're still having to demonstrate. But what I saw this time was different. It wasn't just adults out there. We had young millennial families with their children out there. And they were teaching them what was going on. And that's and I'm seeing more and more of this. And we were talking about who was eligible to vote. They are telling, did you know that? Stop telling everybody that their vote doesn't count. Because they used to say, well, you've been to jail, so your vote don't count. Your vote can be won back in 21 states. And you never lose your vote to use your right to vote if you live in Maine or Vermont. Listen, Brother Blakely, you said this best, and let me go ahead and say this because we all get so excited. But Brother Blakely, you said, and Sister Felicia asked the question. She said, "Where can we start? What's a baseline so we can become politically literate? Start with that NAACP."
Yes, please.
Because these websites will give you the history of the vote. They will give you, take one evening and learn what your rights are. If you're a felon, your right to vote is not completely gone. So don't just be sitting home and say, well, I done been to the big house, I can't vote. That's not true.
As long as you're not on probation and parole, you can vote. Long as you're not, and I need people to understand that. As long as you're not on probation and parole, your voting status is automatically reinstated. I need people to understand the legalities of that, and I want to educate us on that. But let me say this. Yes, and let me. Can I address this with Mr. Jeremy Thompson here? Mr. Thompson says, even more importantly, public schools are not teaching 1% of all the Black history. We need our own schools. And I was getting ready to go in this direction, because I need people to understand something. This systematic system is beyond politics. I need people just to understand. It's not in the political spectrum. It is in education. It is in business. It is in the financial markets. Listen, it's even, Bishop, I don't hate to say it because I'm me. It is what it is. It's even in our religious organizations. And we have people that we're so divided. Understand this. It is the oldest trick in the book. And I really wish people would just grab divide and conquer. Okay, divide and conquer. And that is the oldest trick since the beginning of time. But what I need people to understand, and I want to address Mr. Thompson's information specifically, we got to understand something. When I was coming up in school, I didn't nobody teach me this. I had to discover what my learning style was.
Right.
Because in education, you have to understand something. In education, there is and you can help me here, Miss Richardson. There is a comprehensive lesson plan and objectives that the teachers must follow that is given to them through, again, the political structure, which is the state superintendent and those legislative people. They put that stuff together, and they have these objectives that they have to obtain and keep a certain level numbers for these schools to get funding from the federal government. It's all about numbers. It's all about money. But what I need people to understand is at the same time, they develop these that's the word I'm looking for, these curriculums. I'm not a true educator, so you got to help me in this. Both of y'all are. They develop these curriculums and these objectives and these certain things they got to hit to be test savvy, but they're only focusing on the one aspect of analytical learning. We're not dealing with auditory, visual, kinesthetic, reading and writing. We're not dealing particularly with those type of learning styles. When I was in college, I had to literally, and that's sad, but I literally had to figure out at this point going to college what my learning style was, because I was systematically ingrained into me that everything had to be analytically done, and it was test appropriate to achieve the necessary results that they wanted to see in their particular system. And I need people to understand this. It's very important. And I promise you, I probably can talk 4 and 5 hours about the structure of politics, because I am an avid, and Mr. Austin knows this, I am an avid fighter when it comes to grassroots politics.
Yes.
Because if you can understand the grassroots, it's not about, and don't get me wrong, over the history of time, I appreciate the fact of Dr. Martin Luther King. I appreciate a Congressman John Lewis for them taking and marching all the way down to Salem. I appreciate all the historicity of this. But if we look at the results of what happened, the results of this happened, in my opinion, now let me just say this because I want this to be known as it is my opinion and I'm entitled to it. So, but people to understand the biggest impact, not only did Dr. King have the ear of the president, he impacted the finances with the bus boycott.
Right.
And so when he impacted and got the results, and listen, we always talking about this stuff from a historic standpoint. Let me please stay relevant in today's millennial generation so we have a good understanding. Understand something. I appreciate the establishmentarian that, well, first he died, but then we had the individuals that were so religious about the other lady that took over the Black Lives Movement that was dealing with the LGBT community, and then you had those religious bigots that didn't want to support it. But what I want people to understand is that Black Lives Matter and all of this took effect when they decided that we was going to have not just all these marches and demonstrations, they decided we was going to have a blackout day. And when they start affecting the fact of the
economics,
right?
When you start understanding that a very large percentage of disposable income comes from the Black community, that is why everyone right now is targeting the Black community.
Yes, they are. We spend 1.3 trillion. Listen, we spend 1.3 trillion dollars as a culture in this economy. I don't care what nobody says.
That's green. That's not black. That's green.
That's not black. That's green. Absolutely. And that speaks to everybody. And the fact of the matter that we're spending that money, it affects us.
But our money doesn't stay in our community.
No, it doesn't.
No, by no means. It does not. We have to support our local Black businesses. And then this gets us back to the political spectrum. You're going to get me on a real tangent tonight. This gets us back to the real spectrum of it, of understanding that we're not investing in our own Black businesses. But let me say something to the Black business community. Stop treating our culture and our people as if they're not valuable and you don't have good customer service and professionalism about your business. Right. Because just because you're Black don't mean I'm going to just come support you. Right. I need you to make sure you have a structure, you have an order, and a respect for my dollar. Right. Because it needs to be appreciated. Right. We need to deal with the root of the stuff in our own community that are creating the disparities of financial things that we're not doing. I'm not here to sugarcoat the politics tonight. I'm here to deal with what the disparities are and what the issues are. Stop trying to say, oh, the white man oppressed you and the white man doing this to you. No, some of this stuff you're doing to yourself because you're not practicing good business habits. And if you're going to need that type of help, you can ask for it. I promise you I can help consult some of y'all because some of y'all need some real help. And I can help you on that and guide you and how you can be effective in your community. And the fact of the matter is we need those business owners not just to have businesses. Those are the people we need on those committees. Those are the people we need in those offices because they have financial leverage. And when you have financial leverage, you can ask for what you want.
But Miss Felicia's saying, in her opinion, a blackout isn't effective if we're not spending it wisely. I'll take her comment a step further. I don't think it's effective if we don't have total unity with it.
That is correct.
You know,
that is correct.
You have someone that's going to say, well, I'm going to do it. It's not effective. History shows that the effectiveness of the boycott was because everyone did it. You didn't have 98% of the people walking and 2% of the people saying, well, my feet hurt, my corns hurt.
Absolutely. That's definitely true.
Right. 100% boycotted to the point that they almost went out of business. And then they realized, oh my goodness, we have the power, but unity is the power. And that is why the voter apathy, the voter suppression, that goes back to what we were talking about, the voter apathy and the voter suppression that we are dealing with right now. The most powerful thing they have is divisiveness, that we can't even meet in the middle about everything. Now I have to go back to what you said, young man, about the religion.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we love the Lord. Amen. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
All of us are believers, but you cannot drag the church into everything, even though I know I'll probably be crucified by some of the leaders by dragging the church. But the key that we're wanting to say to you tonight, and I'll underline, if we were to summarize everything that all three of us have said tonight, is that the information is available. Do not keep your vote to yourself and vote and informed ballot this November the 3rd. You understand? Don't be bullied into it. Don't go in there and vote a straight ticket. Know who each one of those candidates and make sure that those candidates are at that time the interest. There's politicians already in office that care nothing about the people. They only care about their families and their friends, and that is who they're working for. I don't have to call out names. You guys listen to the news. Then why can't we as a people, why am I so saved that I can't speak up for my household? I'm speaking up for my household. I got 5 grandchildren that got to go through this public school system. And the public schools need to educate my grandchildren. I was in there until they educated my own. So you find someone who is going to speak for your family and your beliefs. What does that require? Read.
Please.
And then cast an informed ballot. That's what we're saying tonight. Cast an informed ballot. Your vote does count.
Absolutely. Well said.
Tonight, can we finish this next week?
Absolutely.
Oh yes, just give me a date and time. Listen, I'm always ready for this. I love the fact of how we have and trust me, I can be very strategic and technical, but I love how Miss Kim have given us a great underlining for that tonight. Very well said. I give all these underlinings all the time, and I think sometimes we have to have people that is relatable to the culture. And I'm just honestly tonight, I'm just so tired of being that one that have to cater to these people that want us to politicize everything, but we don't deal with the reality of the fact. And I just want to make sure that people understand this. Millennials, people understand this. There are many things that we can do and we're going to do. And Miss Carter, I think it was Miss Felicia Carter. I just want to address this. Please stay following it, because as long as he's on this political train, I promise you, I'm going to be available because I love it. But at the same time, I will work on some things. I will actually get with my team that I work with, and we will see about what city that you're in, wherever you are, wherever you may be located. I can get my social media information to Mr. Austin.
Right in Henderson area.
Oh, they're in Henderson? Okay, well, Miss Carter, well, listen, if you're in Henderson, you just need to contact me. You know, I make enough noise here. I promise you, if you're in Henderson, I make a lot of noise here. Just contact me.
You mentioned about the rural counties. So
yes.
Next week, we're going to try to have a guest coming out of a rural county.
Yes.
She sits on the election board down there, and she can speak to what's going on in these rural counties, and where they're still flying the Confederate flag and that kind of these good old well, there you go.
Well, you got good old boy systems, but the problem, listen, this is the thing, the good old boy system, the problem, and I know we got to go, but the good old boy system, it don't just, and I want people I specifically want the African American community to get out of this. Stop blaming, all these white people for all these problems. I just, listen, stop making excuses. Just stop blaming them for that. I know that people are in positions in key areas, but let me help us. There's some of us that done sold some of us out because of money.
Oh yeah.
Let's just deal with the reality of this now, because people want to sugarcoat. I'm not here to sugarcoat none of this. We've been sugarcoating this stuff for okay, Miss Carter, I see you. We've been sugarcoating this stuff for almost 400 years. It is what it is. Y'all had enough Moses trying to lead you somewhere. Let me be Joshua and give you some reality here. Let me help you, and let's conquer the promised land. Because I want you to understand something now. I really want you to understand this from a perspective that many of us have sold each other out because somebody that was of a different persuasion of particularly maybe Caucasian, maybe white, maybe those individuals that are African Americans that got a lot of money. And my thing is this: I've learned how to make money, so you can't buy me. I can't be bought. So when you learn the value of who you are and learn how to get the same resources that you're giving them through your tax dollars, then I promise you that conversation shifts. And we got to get more into business and financial. But we can deal with all that. Mr. Austin, I'm going to close my mouth because I promise you I feel a tangent coming. Because we got to make sure that these things are taught. And I'm going to get with Mr. Austin and maybe we can get some classes going. And in order to get those classes and workshop done, and I know some of this information is free. But just because some stuff is free, it don't mean all the stuff that's free you got to run to. Some stuff you just got to pay to get some information for. And we got to value these people that are on these executive boards and stuff like that. You got to invest in that stuff because that stuff takes time. And when there's time and there's investment, we need to invest in those people and give them the resources and money to make that happen. I'm going to let it go because we can talk about that a whole nother hour. But please, people, please. Follow this channel. I love it. I love politics. Bishop, keep me on. I promise you, I'll come make a lot of noise for you.
We're going to do this. So we're going to do this. We're going to pick back up on next week. We're going to pick back up and finish what we talked about.
Yes.
You all will join us next week, and we're going to get more guests on.
Yes.
If you know someone that would like to sit on here, we'll pop them on here and we'll talk about the issues. We're heading into a critical time in our nation, and we want to be able to help you recognize the sign of the times. We're going to go. We're going to let you enjoy your weekend, enjoy your holiday, enjoy your Labor Day. Only thing we ask you to do is please, we need you. We need you right here. We need you in our lives. You matter to us. In parting with my guest tonight, I want to thank Minister Kim Richardson for co-hosting with us. I want to thank Blakely Bates for coming on. We'll see him next week. We'll see Minister Kim next week. As I always say when I leave you, tonight when you go to bed, I need you to do me one favor. I want you to look yourself in the mirror, stare at yourself in the eyes. Just look at yourself and ask yourself a question. Today, during this day? Did I do something to work toward my purpose in life? Or did I simply waste another day? We love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And we'll see you next week. A sign of the time.